How are teams trying to attack Vic Fangio's defense? This is a question a lot of you guys have posed to me over the last few weeks. And I think we've gotten enough games now, right? I like to look at things in a 4 to 5 game window to come up with a fairly solid answer. Now, I'll be honest, when I first heard this, and I'm looking at this duration, right? A duration of games that includes teams such as the Los Angeles Rams. It includes teams like the Baltimore Ravens, the Carolina Panthers, the Washington Commanders. Schematically, the way they're coached up, personnel-wise, they're different football teams. I was a little concerned with getting a clear and concrete answer to that. I mean, I almost felt like it's going to be kind of a multifactorial thing, and it is to an extent, but there are some commonalities with the way the teams approach this early in games. What I will say right from the jump is Vic Fangio deserves a ton of credit for being able to stranglehold opponents. Originally or initially, you could see that teams do have some success against us. We do tend to kind of fall into a slight deficit in games, right? We haven't had that team that's really put us down like 14-0 yet. And it'd be interesting to see how we respond to that kind of situation. I hope we don't have to see that, but if it happened, if we're afforded that, then it would be interesting to see how the team responded. But we've had a lot of teams that have kind of gotten us to that brink of like 9-0, 10-0, things like that, to where it's not quite unattainable. And we see the Eagles come back and they stranglehold opponents, but definitely in a concerning area, if you will. Straightforward. What I noticed from the tape is power game. Teams are trying to lean into a power game inside of the run game, inside of the personnel utilization they use, and then also they're trying to hit us with short to intermediary passes into which we have to come up and tackle. And I probably get what you're going to say right away. Steve, we've been pretty good in terms of like past the first 4 games of the season. Past the bye week, we've locked it down when it comes to tackling. The minute they inserted Cooper DeJean into the lineup, this team started to tackle well. 100%, you're right, guys. But I will say, go back and watch the Carolina game with a critical eye a second time. Go back, even if you've watched it a second time, go back again. Watch it with a critical eye and tell me you don't see just a little chip, a little crack in the armor there.
Today. They'll give it to Hubbard on 3rd and long.
Our tackling wasn't the same without Reed Blankenship in the game, guys. They did get to us a little bit there, to be quite honest about the situation. So, a lot of teams have come out and they played us in 2-back sets. Whether it was 21 personnel, 22 personnel, I can tell you that Carolina kind of opened the game up against us that way. After Carolina, or before Carolina really, Baltimore came at us that way with 2-back sets. Theirs were a little different. They used a true fullback inside of their system. They also were some teams were going pro set. They were going more offset. I mean, there's definitely some differences in the way that some teams play their personnel, but even though the groupings may be similar. And then also when you go back to the Washington game, they ran a lot of 2-back set on us as well, right? Theirs a little different. Theirs is a little bit more similar to Carolina, to where they were using Eckler as an APB, an all-purpose back, and then they had Brian Robinson kind of as their power back. But they were also kind of using those 2-back sets to try to get to our defense early in the game and to force them to, number one, read things, right? Trying to create confusion, but also trying to open up angles and lanes to, create some missed tackles. That is one thing I did notice is a power game. And even the Rams, who are a very interesting team, right? You would think the Rams are very different from the other 3 teams we just named. But we do need to keep in mind is that McVay's system does operate quite a bit from under center. And Kyren Williams is a very big part of what they do. And they will throw in multiple tight end sets. They'll hit you with 12 and 13 personnel. So they're not afraid to use multiple sets. I don't recall them going jumbo per se, but I'd have to really track every single snap again, guys, just to see if they went jumbo. I don't recall jumbo sets per se there in terms of them bringing in an extra offensive lineman, but they definitely got downhill a little bit with Kyren Williams early in the game. And honestly, a lot of times in these games when I saw that teams caught themselves, they either tried to get cute, they tried to do something cute instead of just running downhill, and then Jalen Carter or somebody would blow the play up on them, and they would lose ultimately, right? Or they couldn't stay disciplined enough, and they kept falling further and further. Even though they were having success running the ball, they would fall into these little pitfalls of trying to get heavy into the pass game. They would go away from the run game, and then Vic would stranglehold them every time. It's interesting to see it actually on tape, guys. When you go back and you watch these last 4 games, which, like I said, guys, different head coaches, different schemes, different quarterbacks, right? Probably different language groups for the play calling and the play sheets. But yet, in saying all that, right, different personnel. In saying all that, there was some commonalities to the way that they were trying to attack us. And I'm curious to see exactly what Pittsburgh does, because I don't know Pittsburgh's personnel that well, to be quite honest, guys. I can't sit here and tell you that I'm an expert when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers personnel. They're an AFC team. Of course, they cross my radar here and there. I know George Pickens is a good player, but it doesn't look like he's going to play. I know that they have a pretty good tight end rotation there. I know that they have a physical contact, kind of fall forward type of running back. But I don't know their personnel well enough to say that they have a guy kind of like the way Washington can play off of Eckler, the way the young man from Carolina 24 that kind of got himself a little banged up in that game, the way he's kind of an APB and all-purpose back. I don't know that Pittsburgh has that. I'm not sure. I'm not saying they don't. I don't know their personnel well enough to say that. So it's interesting to me to see, are they going to come out in like a multiple tight end set? Are they going to come out with, pony sets, two-back sets? Are they going to be under center? Or another thing you'll see a lot, I saw a lot of teams do was pistol. Teams are running pistol against us early in game. You would see them kind of fall into that pistol formation and try to attack us that way. You saw that on the tape. I mean, it stands out about the way that teams were trying to get physical with us. And it's interesting because everyone keeps trying to get into the street fight with the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think the team that had the most success down there throwing blows in the trenches was a team with the worst record, who had probably, to be fair, was being slept on a little bit by people, man. Number one, the Eagles and the Panthers have just had these really tight games for essentially the Doug Peterson and now the Nick Sirianni era. These games have been tight. They've been contested. The home team has not had a good record. Like the Eagles broke an actual home losing streak. They broke that losing streak by winning last weekend. So, I mean, there was definitely some things that it's ironic that it's the Panthers who probably had the most success fighting us in the trenches. We probably would have thought it would have been the Ravens, or we would have probably thought Washington is a physical team, even though they're not as talented as we are. Carolina got us a little bit, man, in the trenches, to be quite honest, on both sides of the ball. That's the key to this, guys. But I'm looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is how do they want to attack us, guys? Are they going to try to get downhill with Najee Harris? How's our run game going to respond? Because there are times where we take it over. We put you in compromising situations. If you give us a chance, if you put yourself behind the sticks on this defense, you're going to be punting the ball. Straightforward. If you get yourself into a 1st and 15, 1st and 20, 2nd and 15, 2nd and 20 because of an illegal procedure penalty or a holding penalty or something like that, Vic's going to stranglehold you more than likely. And I'll honestly say that I'll give Carolina some credit. Adam Thielen did a heck of a job last week for them. You know that old Toby Keith song, I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was? That was Thielen last week, right? I'm not that same guy no more, but if you just need one game, I could still be Adam Thielen here for one game. He kind of showed that, man. He had a couple of really big third down conversions that were long distance that a lot of teams have not been successful getting on us. Other teams have been put in that situation, and then, Cooper, DeJean, or somebody makes a big play on the ball. Carolina was the first one that kind of, they caught some rhythm, right? They were able to sustain drives where other teams weren't after the initial couple first drives of the game.
They're trying to attack those safeties with some vertical routes.
That's what they're looking for right here, towards the sticks. And
this is going to be an interesting one, guys. This is another fist fight. This is another team that, while they do have a vertical element to their game with George Pickens out, it would lead you to believe that some of the vertical elements of their game is going to be pulled back upon a little bit. So I do expect to see some form of a game plan to where they're going to play downhill football. Maybe they try to hit us a little bit on the outside zone. We'll see how that kind of unfolds itself. But I expect them to put the ball in Najee Harris's hands a little bit. The other thing I'll say is that I do worry that the Eagles could get undisciplined in the rush lanes. I'm not saying they will, guys. I'm not saying that that's been a consistent problem. But I'm saying if you get to a point where you're not consistent with your rush lanes, some quarterbacks have burnt us a little bit because of that. Even Matthew Stafford had a pretty big run on us because we got a little undisciplined in the rush lanes, and he just saw a massive hole and ran and picked up a first down, I believe, on that play. So, Russ being able to kind of create off of that if we get a little undisciplined in the rush lanes, them trying to get Najee Harris downfield, and then also I think they're going to follow the blueprint that every other team has tried to follow over the last 4 games to beat us, which is they're going to try to get physical with us. They're going to try to endure and withstand us. They're going to try to do their best to not get stranglehold by Vic, Saquon Barkley, and his Philadelphia Eagles offensive line. I know Vic he's not an offensive guy, but you get what I'm saying. It's the combination of the two together. It's Vic Fangio and his defensive staff and that defensive line, that front 7, versus or in correlation with what we can do offensively with Saquon Barkley, our offensive line, the way we can just stranglehold you. This is going to be an interesting game. This one's going to be a very interesting game because Pittsburgh is not a huge threat offensively, but they're just a good overall solid football team. This is not a team that we should take lightly. This is a team that they can, while they're not explosive offensively, I mean, look at their output offensively the last few games. I mean, they are putting points up on the board. It may not be as pretty as other teams do it sometimes. They might not look like Cincinnati when Cincinnati's rolling offensively. They might not look like the Rams when the Rams are rolling offensively. They might not look like those teams, but they do put, points on the board. They are physical. It's going to be an interesting way of seeing how this kind of fights itself, how this fight measures its way out. All right, guys, I appreciate y'all's time and attention. If you want to learn more, if you want to learn a little bit more about scheme and kind of like some of these matchups and the way things go, look, man, I would love to have you join the Cerebral Football community. In order to do that, I just need you to hit that button right there. And if you want to watch a video to learn a little bit, check this video out right here. All right, y'all. Peace. I'm out of here.